Welcome to The Significance of Wealth with Tom Ruggie, founder and CEO of Destiny Family Office. I'm Marty Salt. In each episode, Tom brings you interesting topics and guests that reflect the independent thinking and tailored strategies he uses with his own multifamily office clients, exploring the evolving landscape of wealth management and ultra-high net worth, shedding light on the large sphere of alternative and private investments, and delving into the world of collecting as both a passion and investment strategy. Ultimately, he looks at success with a broad lens that may well transform the way we all define the significance of wealth.
Good afternoon, everybody. Tom Ruggie here. I have a special guest today, Hillel Presser. I'll give a little bit of a bio on him, but we're going to be digging somewhat deep into asset protection. And I've asked Hillel if he would be willing to come on for a second podcast, maybe in 6 or 9 months, so that we can really dig into this a lot deeper, because there's an awful lot to go through. But a brief bio on Hillel. Hillel Presser, MBA, represents individuals and businesses in connection with the establishment of comprehensive asset protection plans that incorporate both domestic and international components. Hillel has been featured in numerous newspapers, magazines, including Forbes, Sports Illustrated, The Robb Report, just to name a few. He has also appeared on Fox, Bravo, NBC, ABC, and CBS, as well as prominently profiled in many countries around the world. He has represented some of today's most well-known business owners, celebrities, and professional athletes. And in addition, Hillel has authored several books, including Financial Self-Defense, The Lawyer's Law of Attraction, and Asset Protection Secrets. At the end of this podcast, Hillel is going to offer anybody listening the ability to go to his website and pick up one of these books for free. So hang on for that. So with that, first and foremost, Hillel, wonderful to have you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Oh, appreciate that. So let's just start off. Tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into the specialization of asset protection law.
You know, it's a funny story. No matter how young I was, if you asked me what I was going to be, I probably would have told you I was going to be a lawyer. So at 8 years old, I knew I was going to be a lawyer. And it probably had something to do with the fact that at that point, I was very close with my uncle. He was a mentor of mine. And my uncle, his name was Jimmy. I knew him as Uncle Jimmy, but the rest of the world knew him as Jim the Hammer Shapiro. And Uncle Jimmy was one of the first personal injury attorneys to ever advertise on TV. He would get on TV and he'd scream at the top of his lungs that he's Jim the Hammer Shapiro. He'll wring out every penny, squeeze out every dime. You don't have to like him. Just make sure you call him, and he may be an SOB, but he was your SOB. And imagine
it's a good marketing stick.
This was today. This is the norm, right? But this was 30, 40 years ago in upstate New York. So, if you asked me back then, I probably would have told you I was going to be a personal injury attorney. I would have followed in Uncle Jimmy's footsteps. But, fast forward, many years later, I found out about this thing called asset protection. I never heard about it before. There's thousands of lawyers in every city trying to find a way to take your money. There's only a few lawyers in the entire country that teach you how to protect it. And I always loved law. I always loved business. And to me, asset protection was the perfect marriage of business and law. So rather than be like every other attorney in every city trying to take your money, I thought, how cool would it be to be one of only a few attorneys in the entire country that teach you how to protect it? So I joke and I say that I am the lawyer that hates lawyers.
So you're the 180 of Jimmy the Hammer.
Yeah, I used to tease with him. I'd say there's only one thing stronger than the hammer, and that's the chainsaw.
Good for you. So what are the most common reasons that people would seek somebody like you out for asset protection services?
Sure. Well, people spend a lifetime, trying to grow their business, trying to make money. And people do it for different reasons. They do it because they want to retire. They want to give to charity. They want to give their kids the things that they never had. But everybody's so focused on making money. And very few people actually stop and think about protecting it. So you can work your entire life, no matter what career you're in, and you could be ready to get to be done and be retired. And we live in a very litigious, frivolous society where literally one lawsuit, you can lose everything. And it's one thing if you actually do something, but let's say someone's driving your car, your daughter is driving your car, and she gets in a car accident. Well, if she gets in a car accident, you get sued because you're the owner of the car, and you could lose everything, even though you had zero to do with the accident. So the challenge I give to everybody is, for every 60 minutes you spend making money, just stop and spend 60 seconds thinking about how to protect it.
That's a great way of putting it. So what does this protection look like? So, for example, would liability insurance be a fundamental strategy that you'd recommend for somebody that's maybe even just starting to think about asset protection planning, or kind of what are the lineal steps?
So I don't know if you know a lawyer's favorite answer, which is it depends. And it does depend, right? I don't like to do any cookie cutter work. Everything I do is individualized, customized, and tailored. Look, when it comes to insurance, I tell people buy as much insurance as you can. It's cheap. It helps you sleep at night. But understand that the insurance companies are one of the most profitable industries in the world. And it's not because they pay every claim. If you go downtown in the city, in any city, they probably have their name on one of the biggest buildings. My dad used to tell me growing up, he'd say, if you ever read your insurance policy, there's a page or two of what's covered and then 30 pages of exclusions. My dad would use the term, the big print giveth, the small print taketh away. So I
like
love
that.
insurance. I think you should have it as a first line of defense. But when it comes to protecting what you worked your whole life to obtain, that's not good enough. There's so many exclusions. Like in Florida, I had someone threaten to sue me. I own a lot of real estate, and I had a $10 million umbrella policy. Well, inside that policy, one of the exclusions was that mold was only covered up to $5,000. So I like insurance. It's your first line of defense, but you need layers, you need firewalls, you need belt and suspenders. So it's not enough. You want to have an asset protection plan to supplement your insurance.
Makes a lot of sense. So I think a lot of times when people think about asset protection planning, they're thinking about it in the form of estate planning. So is there, from your point of view, is there a difference between asset protection planning and estate planning? And then also, assuming, I know the answer that there is a difference, but how are they intertwined?
Absolutely. So, first of all, a simple way that I like to explain the differences is very straightforward. Asset protection deals with life, estate planning deals with death. Asset protection deals with life, estate planning deals with death. So, estate planning, which many people know about, okay, those are things like wills, trusts, powers of attorneys, healthcare surrogates. All of that, or the majority of that, deals with death. So estate planning deals with when you pass away, how do you get your assets to go where you want them to go quickly, privately, and hopefully with the least amount of taxes and lawyer fees that are possible. On the other hand, asset protection deals with life. Asset protection deals with how do you take your chips off the table? How do you become uncollectible and judgment proof? How do you protect what you've worked your entire life so hard to obtain so you do have something to pass on? So while estate planning deals with death and passing assets on when you're gone, asset protection deals with life and protecting assets while you're alive so you have something to pass on. But the integration is key. A good plan doesn't just take into consideration asset protection and estate planning. It also takes into consideration tax planning, business succession planning, financial planning, accounting, insurance. So when I work with a client, what my goal, what my outcome hopefully is that while they are alive, we have taken the chips off the table and they're uncollectible and judgment proof. However, when they do pass away, the assets go where they want them to go quickly, privately, less taxes and less lawyer fees.
So I know the answer to this because we have some mutual clients together, but just for the audience. So working with somebody like yourself or within your practice, you evaluate and plan for both the asset protection planning as well as the estate planning? Or is it more of combining with another attorney that focuses 100% on estate planning?
Lawyer's favorite answer. It depends. And again, I'm joking, right? But
Right.
look, in-house, we have estate planning attorneys. They have their LLM, their master's in estate planning. They teach estate planning. They've practiced for 30 years. We have tax attorneys we work with, tax specialists, business succession planning specialists. So we do have all those people, but people come to us for asset protection. The reason that I have those people is to make sure that they have an integrated plan. So can I help someone with an estate plan or a tax plan? Absolutely. But more than likely, they're coming to me for asset protection planning. And a lot of times people come and they already have an estate plan or they already have a tax plan. So do I have those professionals within the firm? Yes. Can we help people with those types of planning? Absolutely. But more so, I have them here so we can integrate their asset protection plan with their estate plan and their tax plan. And oftentimes they come, they have a great estate planning attorney they've worked with for 30 years. No problem. We don't want to step on their toes. We work hand in hand. We have a whole trusted advisors department. We work as kind of the financial quarterback to make sure that the asset protection goes hand in hand with any other planning that they're doing or have done in the past.
Perfect. So understanding that, what do you see across your desk as some of the misconceptions that people have regarding asset protection planning?
There's a lot of them. Number one, like we talked about, that insurance is enough. Again, insurance is a great first step, but it's absolutely not enough. Another thing I see with estate planning that we talked about is almost every day someone will come into my office or I'll have a Zoom call with them and they have a trust in their estate plan. Normally it's a revocable living trust and they think they're protected. That's the biggest misconception. A revocable living trust from your estate plan gives you 0% protection. It helps you when you die avoid probate. It gives you privacy. It's a great tool to have when you die, but it gives you no asset protection benefit whatsoever while you're alive. If you put a brokerage account or a piece of real estate in your revocable trust, if you get sued, the judge just orders you to take it out. So a revocable living trust that's part of your estate plan will not help you, not even 1%. And lastly, and I can go on and on, some people, unfortunately, have a bad misconception of asset protection. And I think that's a shame. I'm not sitting here telling you not to pay your debts, not to pay your creditors, not to pay your liabilities. What I'm telling you is put yourself in the driver's seat. If you get sued and you think you owe the money, write the check. But it's funny, I used to speak 50, 100 times a year all across the country. They'd pay me to go speak to the high net worth business owners. And I'd always say, raise your hand if you've been sued or you were threatened to be sued. And, the majority of the room raises their hand. I then say, keep your hand up if you think you should have been sued. And 90% of the hands go down. There's always the one guy who said, you know what? I did it. I should have been sued.
I messed up.
But my point is look, asset protection is not a bad thing. I'm not telling you not to pay your liabilities, but put yourself in the driver's seat. In fact, I think you have a duty to your family, to your spouse, to your children to protect what you've worked so hard for from a frivolous lawsuit.
Well, Hillel, you mentioned that you could go on forever and ever about this. I'm actually going to try to extract a little bit more out of you. So are there any, obviously without naming names or anything, but are there any examples of cases or situations that you can give that either resulted in protection that may not have already been there, or maybe that helped somebody that was starting to go through, maybe a frivolous lawsuit or something along that line?
All the time, daily. I helped settle a $20 million lawsuit for $250,000. I helped settle a $5 million judgment for $500,000. Now, I was only able to do that because we were able to persuade the other side, the creditors, that it was so difficult and expensive, if not impossible, for them to collect against our clients because they were not the low-hanging fruit. They were proactive and they did what they should have done from an asset protection point of view. that they could have spent years or dozens of years suing, spending tons of money, and they may not have collected anything. So because we had those asset protection plans in place proactively, we were able to settle the case for pennies on the dollar. And I think that's important to note. Asset protection doesn't mean you'll never write a check. If we can avoid lawsuits, that's a home run because now we've saved in lawyer fees. So if we can even save you from being sued once, grand slam. If you do get sued, because if somebody wants to sue you, they're going to sue you. If we can then use that plan to settle for 10, 20, even 30 cents on the dollar, again, that's still a victory. So asset protection doesn't mean you'll never write a check. Hopefully it means you'll write fewer checks and much smaller checks. Now, contrast that. I had someone earlier this week, I can't remember if it was this week or last week. He came into me, he went through a lawsuit. He got sued, he lost, and he had a judgment. Now, thankfully, it wasn't a huge judgment. It was under $200,000. And, at that point, there's nothing I could do to help him because it was after the fact. So, you don't go buy the car insurance after the accident. You don't go buy the life insurance after the death. Really, really important if you want things to work to do things proactively.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I would imagine, just based on my interactions with you and even your bio that you work with, an awful lot of high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals. Is asset protection planning only for the high net worth, ultra high net worth, or is it really something that's a necessity for even, let's call it, the mass affluent?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you that the less you have, the more important it is. And, I'll give you the example. Take a professional athlete. We've represented, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 NFL, NBA players. NFL player signs a contract for $40 million. If he gets sued for $5 million, he's not happy, but he still has $35 million left. Take the school teacher that saved up, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 over their entire career. If they get sued for $1 million, they're wiped out. It's catastrophic. There's no coming back. So I would argue that the less you have, the more important the protection becomes. Now, obviously, we're not going to do the same thing for a school teacher who saved up $300,000 that we will for a NFL player who has $40 million, right? Everyone's going to have a different set of facts and a different set of protections. But no, I don't care how small or how large the people are. If you look at kind of our bell curve, on the lower, call it 10%, we may have people who have, under $1 million, whether they're retired or school teachers or anybody who just worked hard and doesn't want to start over. On the top 10% of our bell curve, yeah, we have the 40 athletes and the dozen billionaires and everything like that. But our 80%, the average client is really just the everyday business owner. And they may be worth a couple $1 million and they may be worth $100 million. And I know it's a big range, but 80% of our business probably falls within that. But I don't care how small or how large they are. Everybody needs and everybody deserves to be protected.
Yeah, and Hillel, you mentioned business owners, and actually, that was going to be my next question. And again, the answer might be it depends, but is the planning?
I'm gonna turn you into a lawyer here.
Yeah, exactly. Is the planning different for business owners versus a non-business owner?
Yeah, look, everybody's planning is different. So, there's no one size fits all. There's no magic bullet. Everybody's personal assets are different. Everybody's business assets are different. Everybody's potential threats and creditors and liabilities are different. But, people are protected against different things. I mean, someone may be protecting against, teenage daughters driving their vehicles. Others may be protecting, against a third marriage. And, business owners may be trying to protect the sales proceeds of their business sale.
Yeah. So a lot of the listeners to our podcast are also collectors, because I'm a big collector, as you're aware. So is there, what do you do to potentially protect against assets that don't necessarily have a title to them or something along that line, like part of my large collection?
Yeah, well, everything has to be owned by someone or something. In fact, it's funny, I've helped thousands of people. I can't make up the stories. I'd like to think that I've seen it all. I had someone get mad at me. This was, I don't know, 10, 15 plus years ago because I didn't talk about their comic book collection, which right now, I'm very in tune with because people have so many different assets. They have arts and antiques, they have furniture, they have jewelry, they have crypto. I mean, assets come in all different shapes and sizes, but everything has to be owned by someone or some entity. So if you have $1 million comic book collection, or if you have $1 million designer wardrobe, I don't care what the asset is, there's a way to put that in some sort of protective entity where lawsuits cannot get to it.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about actually you and I getting together personally regarding my situation. So that'll be interesting, to hear from you exactly how that would work, because that is a decent part of my personal net worth. So excited to learn more about that. Any other case studies? Any real life examples of where asset protection strategies made a significant difference because of the way they were structured? Or
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and tell you countless, war stories of when we were able to help a client. I think the better stories are when you weren't able to help a client, because that's what we learn from. And it happens to everyone. I won't use obviously any names or anything like that, but I know someone, really, really great guy, and he was an attorney. And I'm going to make the story very, very short, and I'm going to save all the gruesome details. But, his daughter was driving his car, wasn't doing anything wrong. The daughter got hit by a drunk driver. Okay. Daughter severely injured. Thank God she's okay now. Person in her car actually passed away.
oh wow,
When her car got hit, her car flew into two other cars. And those two other people had, the minor back pains or neck pains and that type of thing. Well, the lawyer, the father, okay, had so many medical bills, so many legal bills, went after the drunk driver. The drunk driver had no insurance. To make it worse, the two cars that the lawyer's daughter's car flew into that got hit, they sued the drunk driver. Of course, the drunk driver had no insurance. They then sued this girl's father, the attorney. Now, the girl's father, the attorney, did nothing wrong except the car was titled in his name. And if there's ever a car accident, there's two people who can be sued: the owner of the car and the driver of the car. So one of the biggest easy things to do, if we learn nothing else from talking today, it's how to title your vehicles. Your car should only be titled to the primary driver. What does that mean? If there's a husband and wife, whatever car the husband drives 80% of the time, it should be in his name and his name alone. Whatever car the wife drives 80% of the time, it should be in her name and her name alone. I get it. The husband may move the wife's car. The wife may move the husband's car once in a while. I get it. But you don't want to put both names on the title of the car. And the title should only be to the actual driver. Because if the husband's name is titled to a car and the wife's driving it, the wife gets sued as the driver, the husband gets sued as the owner. Now think about this for a business, right? All the business owners throw their cars in the business name because they want an expense. What happens if you get in a car accident on Saturday night, going to Outback Steakhouse? Because you're driving the car, you get sued. Because your business owns the car, you just put your entire business at risk. So there's ways where you don't title the car to the business, but you can still get the expense. But if we learn nothing else today, it's how to title vehicles, your personal vehicles, which should only be titled to one person, which is the primary driver.
yeah. And you've already mentioned it, but something I learned a long time ago, which is the importance of having your child or children's cars titled in their name as well.
Absolutely. And look, sometimes people have just a global car that everyone uses. Maybe a nanny uses it, a kid uses it. If you don't really have a primary driver, maybe we stick that in an LLC. And look, insurance may be more. It may cost us another $1,000 or $2,000 a year. It is worth it.
Maybe worth it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so you've already given us one really good takeaway, but you kind of stole some thunder from me, because I was going to ask what the kind of the quick 30-second most important takeaways. I would bet you've got another one up your sleeve, though.
Yeah. Again, it's endless. But I think if we look to encompass everything, some really good feedback is own nothing control everything. Own nothing, control everything. If you own something, if you own a $300,000 brokerage account, a $1 million boat, shares in an S Corp, C Corp, or an LLC, if you own something, it is yours to lose. If you don't own it, you can't lose it. So for example, I buy a vacation home in New York. If that vacation home in New York is in my name and I get sued, I lose that vacation home. If instead I take that vacation home and I put it in a protective entity, I don't own the home, the protective entity owns it. Now, if I get sued, I can't lose the home. No different with a brokerage account. If I have a $1 million brokerage account and it's in my name or the name of my revocable living trust, if I get sued, I lose the $1 million brokerage account. If instead I take the $1 million brokerage account and put it in a protective entity, it's no longer mine to lose. Now, if I get sued, I can't lose the $1 million brokerage account. So that's literally the difference between keeping and losing your real estate and keeping and losing your liquid assets. Own nothing, control everything. I don't care who owns the asset. I just care, can I use it? Can I rent it? Can I sell it? Et cetera, et cetera. But if you own it, you can lose it. And it's crazy because your whole life you're taught acquire, acquire, acquire. And now some guy is telling you to own nothing. One thing I can promise you, if you own it and you get sued, you can lose it. Of course, there's some exceptions. Own nothing, control everything.
I like that. So we gave a teaser at the beginning of the podcast that you've written quite a number of books. In fact, I have them right here. Got my own copies.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind, give us some information on how somebody can get in touch with you, and perhaps somebody can get a hold of one of your books to learn more about what you do and find out more about their own situation.
Absolutely. Look, if any of your listeners want to learn more and become more educated, that's one of our missions. It's to educate as many people as we can. They can go to our website. It's www.assetprotectionattorneys.com. That's www.assetprotectionattorneys.com. Right on the main page, there's a contact us form. If they mention that they heard about us on your show, I'm happy to send them complimentary copies of the books that I authored.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What a wonderful offer, and greatly appreciate that. And hopefully some of our audience will take you up on that wonderful gesture. So with that, I want to thank you again so much for being here with us today. As I mentioned at the beginning, in my view, we really just kind of tapped into this just a little bit. In fact, I had mentioned to you, I literally come up with about 25 or 30 questions, but some were getting a little too in detail and specific without going through the basics. So hopefully we see you again in 6 or 9 months, and we'll get in a little more detail and learn some more. And you've got great information. I love a lot of the things that you told to us today. In fact, I didn't take some notes, but when I re-listened to it, there's a few things I'm going to write down and use in some of my discussions with some of my clients. So greatly appreciate it. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
On behalf of Tom Ruggie and Destiny Family Office, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Significance of Wealth and will continue to tune into future episodes. Connect with us at destinyfamilyoffice.com on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Reddit, and recommend our podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Until next time. The expressed views, thoughts, and opinions in this episode of The Significance of Wealth belong solely to the host and/or guests and are not investment recommendations or offers to buy or sell securities or private investments by Destiny Wealth Partners or its affiliates. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The funds discussed are typically for qualified purchasers, defined as $5 million of investment net worth, exclusive of primary residence.